Welcome to Catholic Connection with Teresa Tomeo, keeping you connected to your faith and your world. Teresa tackles the issues of faith and culture, the pro-life message, and media awareness. And now, here's Teresa Tomeo.
And it's a Wednesday, the middle of the first full week of August. Great to be with you on a Wednesday and every day here at EWTN's Catholic Connection. Another great lineup, thanks to my stellar producers back at the ranch in Irondale, Alabama. We are going to be taking a look at one of the issues that developed after the overturning of Roe v. Wade several years ago. Many in the abortion industry on the left were saying, oh, this is horrible. Women are going to die because abortion access will be limited to them. Well, one of the lies they continue to tell is that it's safer for a woman who may have a difficult medical condition during her pregnancy to kill the child, just to terminate, rather than carry it to full term. That's why I love the great research and the work of the wonderful folks at the Charlotte Lozier Institute. We're going to be joined by Dr. Ingrid Skop, and she's a director of medical affairs for that fine research organization. A little background for you. Since the Supreme Court's decision in the Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization, there have been widespread claims that women in pro-life states will be unable to get the care they need during pregnancy emergencies. Pro-life laws have been criticized and challenged based on assumptions that induced abortion is an essential part of health care and necessary for treating dangerous maternal health conditions. According to this claim, to keep women safe, easily accessible elective abortion is needed. We'll discuss with a good doctor from the Charlotte Lozier Institute. There's a beautiful article on their website as well, and we will also share that link with you. And then it's Shrines and Wonders Wednesday, of course, based on my EWTN books by the same name, Italy's Shrines and Wonders. So Volume 2, as you know, just came out this summer, all about the wonderful St. Francis of Assisi, just in time for the year of St. Francis, in which we're in the middle of right now. And today we are going to take you to Santa Maria degli Angeli, and we're going to share with you one of my segments from our beautiful online free series, The Unknown St. Francis. And we call it The Unknown St. Francis because there are many places, as I describe in the series and the book, of which people are not aware, but are strongly and very importantly associated with the life and the ministry of St. Francis of Assisi. So we'll take you to St. Mary of the Angels in the Pornchucula because tomorrow the Holy Father is going to be there. He's not going up to Assisi. He's not traveling up Monte Sabastio. He is staying down in the city of St. Mary of the Angels, named after the Basilica of St. Mary of the Angels. We'll here be praying at the Pornchucula inside the church, the little portion church inside St. Mary of the Angels, and then coming out and greeting young people and answering questions. How wonderful will that be? So we will take you there in Shrines and Wonders Wednesday. We stay in Italy, but go a little further south from Umbria down to the Lazio region, of course, with Joan Lewis and our Jones Rome. A great deal going on. The Holy Father's audience today was actually in St. Peter's Basilica as opposed to outside in St. Peter's Square. And then, of course, a big announcement about his travels coming up later this fall. We'll have all the details. Hour number 2 in 2 cents. I want to take a look at a very, very powerful exchange and reaction from a famous sports figure who was raked over the coals during the whole COVID situation because he spoke out against the vaccine. And now he is having some very good comments about the latest developments with Anthony Fauci. And by the way, that's a big story still this week because tomorrow there will be a vote in Congress on contempt for Anthony Fauci. So we'll talk about that in 2 cents from a Catholic perspective as well. And then Royce Hood joins us. He's a chief operating officer of the Diocese of Peoria. We're going to be talking about a beautiful Sheen Awards Gala, associated, of course, with Archbishop Sheen, the big events coming up this year for him. And here's what's really funny about this little insider secret. I've known Royce, this is how old I am and how quickly time flies. I've known him since he was a student, a law student at Ave Maria University. I interviewed him repeatedly at the March for Life. Then he went on to be a successful lawyer. Now he's the chief operating officer of the Diocese of Peoria. Time flies. Anyway, he is a great, great Catholic young man, and we'll talk about all these beautiful events relating to the big events coming up this fall connected to Archbishop Fulton Sheen. Let's take a quick look at the forecast for you this morning and see what's happening weather-wise. Okay, so we have showers and storms that are continuing across the East Coast. We have heat, critical fire weather, and some very dry conditions and poor air quality continuing on the West Coast. A series of fronts will focus locally heavy showers and storms across portions of the central and eastern part of the country. Now, that's through the end of the work week, so through Friday. And then we have dangerous to extreme heat continuing across the southwest part of the country, spreading eastward over the weekend into early next week. Elevated fire weather conditions continuing across the Great Basin with degraded air quality lingering across the northwest and most likely due to many of the wildfires, especially in Washington state. Right now, already 5 minutes past the hour. A lot of news to get through on a busy Wednesday morning, August 5th. So here we go, here on EWTN's Catholic Connection. President Trump says Iran is lying when it says there are no talks with the U.S.
The only thing that matters is action, and they want to make a deal. We'll see what happens. If they don't make a deal, it's going to be too bad.
That was a president on Fox News last night. Iran and Oman say they have control of the Strait of Hormuz, a vital maritime passage that saw 20% of the world's oil traffic before the war with Iran. Meanwhile, the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, saying the progress has been made in talks with both countries, but no agreement has yet been reached. In response to President Donald Trump's announcement last week of a deal between the U.S.-led Board of Peace, Israel, and Hamas, the USCCB, or the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, calling now for intense prayer for that deal's success as Gaza faces a worsening humanitarian crisis. You can find the full report on EWTNnews.com. In an August 3rd statement, Bishop Zayden, chair of the USCCB's Committee on International Justice and Peace, saying he is heartened by the news of an agreement which aims at the disarmament of Hamas and Israel's military withdrawal from Gaza, calling for intense prayers again for the success of the discussions. Donald Trump announcing late last month that his Board of Peace did indeed reach a deal for Hamas to fully disarm after nearly 3 years of war. Trump said the agreement will be carried out in carefully structured phases. As disarmament is completed, Israeli forces will withdraw and the International Stabilization Force will work with the new Palestinian police force to take responsibility for Gaza being safe for its residents and for its neighbors. Though a Hamas official confirmed the disarmament pact the next day, according to AP, significant hurdles still remain, leaving the deal's implementation uncertain despite U.S. optimism. Michael Kastner tells us an investigation now underway after a man was arrested for suspicious behavior, this outside a fundraiser for President Trump.
Trump was in Southern California on Tuesday for a fundraising dinner at his golf club near Long Beach, where he was met outside the venue by a large group of both supporters and protesters. The same day, the LAPD announced they'd arrested a man over the weekend who was seen photographing the golf club just days before Trump's visit. The suspect was reportedly a 38-year-old man from Downey, California, who had several weapons in his possession. In Los Angeles, I'm Michael Kastner.
Of course, voters hitting the polls yesterday for another big primary election day in America. In arguably the closest watch race of the day, several outlets say Abdul Sayed has won at Michigan's Democratic U.S. Senate primary. The Democratic Socialist appearing to have defeated establishment-backed Congresswoman Haley Stevens, although early this morning she was still not ready to concede as she was addressing supporters.
We knew that this was going to be a close race, and that's exactly what we've got.
The race has divided the Democratic Party with fears within the DNC that an Al-Sayed victory would pull the party even further left and hurt their midterm hopes to regain control of the U.S. House and Senate. NBC News, meanwhile, projecting John James will win the Republican primary for Michigan governor. The congressman defeating Perry Johnson and Mike Cox. The president endorsed James and will face Democrat Jocelyn Benson in the midterm elections for the seat of governor in the Great Lakes state. Scott Carr tells us a report says at least 12 states now have reported cyber attacks against their water systems that could be linked to Iran.
ABC News says officials in Michigan, one of the newer states to report the attacks, are monitoring the situation and coordinating with federal partners. So far, there have been no reports of any disruptions to water supplies or wastewater treatment. Minnesota was the first state to report the attacks last week. On Friday, President Trump blamed Minnesota's Democratic governor for the attacks, even though U.S. officials had previously said they're investigating whether Iran or hackers associated with Iran could be behind them. I'm Scott Carr in Washington.
A man suspected of starting one of the massive wildfires in Spokane, Washington, has appeared in court for a hearing. That happened yesterday, where the judge set bond and the conditions for Aaron Farnacci.
With respect to the release conditions, the court will adopt the $1 million bond that's already in place and adopt all the proposed release conditions as suggested by the prosecution.
Aaron Farnacci was arrested by a SWAT team earlier this week after a witness said he saw him acting suspiciously near the Old Trails fire, where the Old Trails fire began on Saturday. Again, he appeared in the Spokane court remotely from jail where the charges were read. The 37-year-old resident of the area is being held on a $1 million bond and is charged with first-degree arson. And speaking of Washington state, residents there are starting to return to their homes after finding charred remains of their houses burned in that Old Trails fire. Residents began returning home yesterday morning to find their houses charred down to the chimneys. Many residents, however, say they do plan to rebuild. The Old Trails fire is part of the larger Spokane complex fire that has destroyed 700 structures, including hundreds of homes, since it began over the weekend. And the Senate Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee voting tomorrow on whether to hold Dr. Anthony Fauci in contempt. That vote after the former White House health advisor invoked the Fifth Amendment 111 times in a hearing last Wednesday about the COVID-19 pandemic. He refused to answer any questions after his unredacted diary, which revealed he lied about the source of the virus, the safety and efficacy of the vaccine, as well as lockdowns and other issues during the crisis. And Steelers quarterback Aaron Rodgers is criticizing Dr. Fauci over his Senate hearing last month. Rodgers was appearing on the Pat McAfee show live from the Steelers training camp, where he pretty much tore into Fauci for pleading the fifth hundreds of times during his recent hearing before the Homeland Security and Government Affairs Committee. The veteran quarterback called the former White House health advisor an absolute coward for refusing to answer questions related to COVID-19 pandemic and the government's response. Rodgers took heavy criticism from some officials and members of the public and the sports media for being an outspoken critic against a COVID vaccine during COVID. And President Trump's pick to lead the Justice Department has been approved by a key Senate committee. Todd Blanche winning support of Senator John Cornyn of Texas by signing a deal to permanently rescind the nearly $2 billion anti-weaponization fund.
The weaponization fund is dead, and of course I expect them to live up to that in any future litigation.
The fund was built as a way to compensate those who claimed they were unfairly targeted by the Biden administration, the deal also narrowing the scope of Trump and his family's audit immunity. And we'll be talking more about this exciting journey planned for the Pope coming up in November. Joan Lewis will be with us, of course, at 39 minutes past the hour. But the Holy Father is taking a big apostolic journey to Uruguay, Argentina, and Peru in mid-November. And that's according to a newly released statement from the press office. And it's going to be an exciting journey. Joan is going to give us the details. Of course, Peru is a country where the Holy Father is very well known and loved. He first arrived as a missionary there in the 1980s, later serving as a bishop and acquiring citizenship. Thanks for tuning in the middle of the week and every day here on EWTN's Catholic Connection. We'll be right back. 15 minutes past the hour. Thanks for listening to EWTN's Global Catholic Radio and EWTN's Catholic Connection, your pro-life radio and TV and online network all the time. So excited and grateful for the work of the wonderful Charlotte Lozier Institute. Dr. Ingrid Skop is the Director of Medical Affairs. And there's a very good updated article on the Charlotte Lozier website, and we'll give you that link before we sign off with a good doctor. But this is a super important topic always because, of course, we are a people of life. But we are in a midterm year. We just had the primaries yesterday in several states, and you know this is going to be coming up again and again as we get closer to November, which is why we need the reality. We need the facts. So, Doctor, thanks for joining us. Thanks for all great work. And I know this must be so frustrating for you as a pro-life medical doctor to see the pro-aborts push this, especially since the overturning of Roe v. Wade and the Dobbs decision, claiming that pro-life states can't help women when they find themselves in challenging medical situations during their pregnancies. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you, Teresa. And I'm so glad we're highlighting this because I do believe this is the single most damaging narrative that we have seen by the pro-abortion activists since the Dobbs decision. Americans care for women. They care for their unborn children. They want them to be supported. But we've discovered that if they believe that these laws actually harm women, then in many cases they will oppose them, even if they would normally want to protect those babies, especially from late abortions.
So what is the left saying in terms of the safety or lack thereof in pro-life states?
Well, the dominant narrative since the Dobbs decision has been that doctors won't be able to treat true obstetric emergencies, and that this will cause maternal mortality, which is already, by the way, horrible in our country, and it has been under the Roe era for decades. So abortion wasn't protecting women then, but the narrative has been that doctors can't intervene when they really need to. This is absolutely a lie. Every pro-life law allows an exception permitting a doctor to use his own clinical judgment to determine if a pregnancy needs to end in an emergency. The good news is that hardly ever happens at a time that the baby is unable to survive. So as an obstetrician, in the tragic times that I do need to separate a mother from her unborn child in order to protect her life or to prevent permanent impairment of a major organ system, I've always been able to do that by induced labor, sometimes by cesarean if indicated. But in that situation, I deliver that baby, I hand him to the neonatologist, and most of the time his life can be saved. Even if he is too young or too sick to survive, that's not an abortion. An abortion is defined as having the intent to end that unborn life. So I don't need to intentionally kill my second patient in order to save his mother. Sometimes I need to deliver him. Sometimes, tragically, he does not survive. But that is permitted in every state in our country. That has nothing to do with abortion laws.
You know, the left is always playing to the fear factor. As I look at the word fear as an acronym of false evidence appearing as real. And how interesting is it, Doctor, that this argument that pro-life states can't handle pregnant women with their emergencies prior to Roe v. Wade being overturned, all of a sudden this was a big issue. You didn't hear about it before. And this is where people need to think, okay, well, if this was a real issue, if this was an ongoing issue, why hasn't the movement raised this for years? Your thoughts?
You think of most hospital systems, Baptist, Methodist, Catholic. No hospital system that I've ever worked in 30 years has allowed elective abortion. And yet they've always had protocols that have allowed doctors to deliver women in obstetric emergencies. So it wasn't happening. It wasn't a problem before Dobbs. It should not be a problem after Dobbs. But unfortunately, the fear-mongering promoted by pro-abortion media, and I'm sad to say the fear-mongering promoted by pro-abortion medical organizations is what has driven this narrative. Our professional medical organizations have not educated doctors. They've not told them the law allows you to intervene. Here's the circumstances where you can intervene, because they want the laws to fail too. They want to be allowed to continue to do abortions, often for eugenic reasons. And so sadly, doctors have been left alone without any guidance, and all they've been given is this fear-mongering narrative that if they make the wrong decision, somebody's going to come behind them, take their medical license, charge them with a felony, give them a substantial monetary penalty. The good news is no doctor in the United States of America has been prosecuted for performing an abortion for the life of the mother in almost 100 years.
Right. These are all narratives that are invented.
Happening.
Yeah.
It's not happening, but unfortunately doctors have been made to fear the laws. And it may be the case that some doctors have been slow to intervene when they know they should intervene. that's their fault for not understanding the law. That's not the law's fault because it permits that intervention.
We are talking with Dr. Ingrid Skop. She is a VP and Director of the Medical Affairs for the Charlotte Lozier Institute. We're talking about an updated fact sheet. You need to get a hold of this, folks, and keep this handy. Study it, pray over it, not just to win an argument, but to understand the pro-life issues, especially as we go into another contentious election with the midterms. There's a beautiful fact sheet that the Charlotte Lozier Institute put together regarding the treatment of expectant mothers with life-threatening conditions. And just let me give you the website. I don't know if I pulled it up or not. Do you have the website, Doctor, where they can find it? Because I know it's right on the homepage, I think, pretty much.
Sure. It's at Lozier, Lozier, institute.org. And it is under the latest research tab, so it should be easy to find.
Now, here's something else in terms of the arguments that come around, especially election time. They keep repeating lies as facts. For example, Dr. Bernard Nathanson, the late Dr. Bernard Nathanson, who was the co-founder of the original NARAL. It's now called NARAL Pro-Choice Action League, NARAL Pro-Choice America, whatever it's called. They changed the name to make it sound more, to make it sound more acceptable. He stated with the media years ago, prior to Roe v. Wade, that there were 5,000 to 10,000 women killed yearly from back alley abortions before it legalized abortion. He later, after he had his conversion, after he became a pro-life leader, admitted those were totally fabricated, and yet the left still uses those numbers and people still believe it.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, it wasn't happening then. The CDC documented less than 100 deaths even before Roe per year from legal and illegal abortions, because many states did have legal abortion. And of course, medical care has only improved since that time. And I would say that regarding our maternal mortality, more than half of maternal deaths are mental health causes or to chronic illness, because unfortunately our population is very unhealthy. It's not related very often to catastrophic events in childbirth, and yet women have been taught to fear childbirth. They've been taught to fear having a baby, that it'll ruin their life. So these deceptive narratives are harming our country in so many ways and preventing many women from experiencing the joy of having a child.
Yeah. You know, I wonder, and we pray for them, how many of these cases are put out there, these narratives are put out there by post-abortive women. God bless them. And again, we pray for them that haven't received help for post-abortion syndrome.
Yeah, absolutely. There's undoubtedly many women suffering because of their abortion. And regarding mental health, studies in Europe tell us a woman is 6 times as likely to die of a mental health cause, a death of despair, suicide, overdose, even intimate partner homicide in the year following an abortion than if she'd given birth to her child. Our CDC can't pick up those deaths, so that's why no one's hearing about it. But the reality is so many women suffer emotionally, and many more women suffer physically than we're told, again, because of our data deficiencies. We actually, the people who are handling the data at the CDC don't really want to know. The FDA doesn't really want to know how many women are harmed by these abortion drugs, and so they don't try to collect that information.
Mm-hmm. And how has this updated piece been received? Oh, we're out of time. Darn, I needed more time with you, Doctor. Sorry. Give us the website. Well, I'm so interested in this. It's such an important issue. Give us the website again and where we can find this updated article.
Sure. It's lozierinstitute.org. Also, there's a tab called On Women's Health that talks about maternal mortality in great detail for anyone who's interested.
Dr. Ingrid Skop from Charlotte Lozier Institute. We'll be right back. Welcome back. It is a Wednesday morning, and you know that music, bumper music as we call it in the biz, 28 minutes past the hour. Catholic Connection on a Wednesday, an EWTN production, and my EWTN book, or books I should say, entitled Italy's Shrines and Wonders. So we have 2 of them now. Volume 2 just came out earlier in the summer in mid-June, and it's all about St. Francis. Now, this is a big deal this week and the rest of the year, folks. Obviously, we are in the year of St. Francis. And so for Shrines and Wonders Wednesday, I thought we would go back to the area of the hometown of St. Francis, with a little bit of a twist. The Holy Father will be in the area tomorrow for many events regarding a beautiful conference that's wrapping up with young people. However, when they say he's going to Assisi, technically he's not going up Monte Sabasio, which is where Assisi is built on top of that beautiful mountain in central Italy. He will be down below in another city associated with the saint, Santa Maria degli Angeli, which is named after the church St. Mary of the Angels. And inside that church are so many important things related to the ministry of St. Francis of Assisi. That location, by the way, is where really the friar minors began after being kicked out of these two huts in Rivetorto. Now, this is all in my series, The Unknown St. Francis, which was released earlier this year. It's free. It's produced by our beautiful team at EWTN Mission Advancement. And you can watch it, 8 segments, all shot on location in Umbria, Lazio, and Tuscany. And you can find it at EWTN.com, St. Francis. And so St. Mary of the Angels is a very important papal basilica, extremely important in the life of this great saint. This is where it all began, really. This is where things really began to take hold, even though he actually started to write the rule for the Friars Minor in Rivetorto, which is a small town not far from St. Mary of the Angels. This is where he conferred the habit on St. Clare. This is where he died at St. Mary of the Angels, that field, which is now St. Mary of the Angels, of course. The Chapel of the Transit is there. It is just a spectacular church and just a place you need to go and spend time and do the il dolce far niente, the sweetness of doing nothing thing that so many Italians do. Go there, sit, pray, go inside the little portion church. The church, by the way, one of which he repaired with his own hands, and pray and ask for the intercession of St. Francis of Assisi. It's one of my favorite spots. Been there many times, but in the last few years, we've been spending a lot more time there because we tend to attend the English Mass, which is every Sunday. If you're ever visiting in the Assisi area and you would like to hear a Mass in English, celebrated in English, we go on Sundays at 11 a.m. And if you remember earlier this year when the Holy Father went to that area of Italy where he went to meet the bishops, they were meeting at St. Mary of the Angels, there is a beautiful room with an image of the Last Supper where he spoke to the bishops and the priests from the Assisi diocese. And that's where we have the Mass. So it fits quite a few people. We also have pilgrimage Masses there as well. It's very convenient. But then afterwards, you can go and spend some time in the church. You can visit. They have a beautiful gift shop, and they have a bookstore. It's just a great place. And the town of St. Mary of the Angels is very pretty with a lot of great restaurants right across the street from the church. But don't bypass St. Mary of the Angels. There's so much there to see in connection with the life of St. Francis. So this is how we start the series. We begin in the place where it all began, and we're going to roll that audio from segment number 1 of Shrines and Wonders. Well, actually, it's this series, Shrines and Wonder Wednesday, that we do here, but from our series, The Unknown St. Francis, which again, you can find at EWTN.com/St. Francis. Andiamo. Let's go to Santa Maria degli Angeli. What's on my heart, really, is to show you Italy through the eyes of the saints and to take you to some places that you may not be familiar with when it comes to the life of this great saint, St. Francis, and also St. Clare of Assisi, whom we'll also be learning more about in this special Learned series. It means so much to me to show you these places because often as I lead tours and pilgrimages, people will rush through. They'll come to a specific site, they'll take a few pictures, but they don't stop and they don't reflect and they don't learn why the saint chose a particular place. For example, we are in St. Mary of the Angels in Assisi, technically below the city, and behind me is the little portion church in Italian Porciuncula. This was actually the headquarters of St. Francis. This is where he embraced St. Clare as she walked away from her lifestyle as well. But again, this is one of those places people will hop off the bus, walk through very quickly, and really not give it much thought in terms of what happened here. This is also the church where St. Francis passed away 800 years ago. It's a beautiful place, a place of peace, a place of great religious art, and a place for you to get closer to the saints, not just St. Francis, but many from this beautiful area of Italy, which is known as the Corte Verde, the Green Heart, or the Land of the Saints. In this series, we're going to take you, in addition to the areas around Assisi that were very important to St. Francis, we'll take you to the beautiful town of Gubbio, which happens to be my favorite. I love telling people all about the story of the Wolf of Gubbio, which people in the area say actually happened. We'll also take you to the town of Spoleto. That is very important in the life of St. Francis because it's there where he thought he was going to go off and join the papal army. He stops there, becomes ill, and has a total change of heart after hearing from the Lord. We'll also go to Greccio because it's Christmas all year round at Greccio, and that's a place where St. Francis actually established the first creche. We'll learn about the relationship, the friendships between St. Clare and St. Francis and others in this area who grew the faith because they had a passion for the Lord. The other point I really want to share with you during this series is how St. Francis brings us back to the basics of the faith, which is so necessary in our life and in our world overall. He teaches us about the importance of the Eucharist, about the incarnational Lord. And he loved Jesus so much that he not only wanted to rebuild the church spiritually, but physically as well. He made sure that churches in this area and beyond were ready to receive the Lord in the Eucharist, making sure that they were clean and that they were well repaired. And so he really did, not only literally, but figuratively, rebuild the church. So why celebrate 800 years of the passing of St. Francis of Assisi? Minister General Friar Carlos Alberto Tavarelli says, as we celebrate the solemnity of St. Francis, we realize not only his holiness, which is a gift for the whole church, but also of his being a brother and a guide for those who sincerely seek to build a new world. More just, more fraternal, more respectful of the dignity and freedom of every human being. We'll also be challenged by St. Francis. Even though he died 800 years ago, he's still encouraging us to really answer this question. What would happen if we gave it all over to God? Or as my mother used to say when I was growing up, to offer it up to God and put it at the foot of the cross. St. Francis did that not once, but over and over again in his life. Such a great witness for all of us. So I hope you enjoyed this journey we're going to be taking throughout central Italy mainly, in the life of St. Francis, some known and some unknown places where you can learn all about the great life of this amazing saint that passed away 800 years ago. But we still celebrate him and have so much to learn from him today. Andiamo, let's go. So again, you can find that free, and I want to emphasize it's free, doesn't cost a thing, series from our wonderful mission advancement team. It's called an EWTN Learn series, The Unknown St. Francis, EWTN.com, St. Francis. And don't forget, the Pope will be right where we were just now. The Pope will be tomorrow in the beautiful Basilica of St. Mary of the Angels and meeting with young people outside in the main piazza and also praying in the little portion church, the Portiuncula. We'll be right back. We're staying in Bella Italia, going south in the region of Lazio, where we find my bestie, Joan Lewis, of course, Joan's Rome. And I know you love St. Mary of the Angels as much as I do. It's such an amazing church and area. And you know that town, which is named after the church, is lovely. There's that beautiful fontana, the fountain right across the street, lovely restaurants and cute little hotels. It's just a lovely place.
It is, and I think, all of us probably have the habit, but how can you not have it, of going up the hill a bit to Assisi, to where St. Francis was born, lived, founded the Franciscans, et cetera, et cetera. So we usually go there to relive his life, but sometimes forgetting that the Portiuncula, which is a word which in Italian means a little piece of land, it's like a mini chapel that's inside the church, at the lower part of Assisi. But it's so filled with, if you have time and there's not big crowds, you just sit there, you take in the whole atmosphere, you take in the frescoes, you reflect. It's so easy to meditate on Francis and his life. and his life as an example for all of us, a life of holiness. So I love the Porziuncola with all my heart, and always try to minimum say a rosary there before I walk up the hill. Well, I don't walk anymore up the hill, but before I go up the hill to the actual
That's quite a hike. I don't think too many people walk unless they're Franciscan pilgrims. That's a little bit of
but Teresa, it makes you appreciate St. Francis even more.
Absolutely.
He walked everywhere.
He worked, and of course, well, how about Laverna? That's like the craziest thing. That first time we went there, it took us 10 minutes around and around and around in the cart. I'm like, for crying out loud at St. Francis, I know you like the quiet places, but this is a bit much. In the middle of the mountain would have been fine, But anyway, so tomorrow, the Holy Father, speaking of St. Mary of the Angels, he's going to be there.
Oh, tomorrow is the big day for the Pope. And I was covering that because I mentioned that, of course, the Holy Father, or the Vatican, had posted an article about the Pope's August 6th trip, which, by the way, tomorrow's the feast of the Transfiguration. And what the Pope has done in recent days, because the Pope tomorrow is going to celebrate Mass with the young people participating in what's called the Go Franciscan Youth Meeting. And tomorrow's the final day of this 3-day youth festival. So the Pope, will have a message for all of us. Anything the Pope says to young can apply to all of us.
Right.
But the thing is, in recent days, actually, and weeks, he's sent a lot of messages to youth gatherings
to young people,
in different
right?
Countries. Yeah, and so he's talked to the young people of Ecuador and Medjugorje, and even a message to those in Assisi, another message to the young people of Peru. So youth are always in his mind, and he makes 2 points. One, always make Jesus the entire focus of your life. And 2, you young people, you give us heart. You are not just the future, but the present of the church, the present time of the church. So lots of important messages and beautiful things I know we're going to see tomorrow. Just watch Leo's radiant face when he gets together with young people, and I hope the temperature will drop a few degrees.
What's it like now?
I don't know. I haven't gone online since it was 94. So, but this is actually the hottest point of the day. It isn't noon. It's noon on. 3, 4, 5 o'clock are the times when you truly want to stay at home. You're going to go out only with utter necessity. So, and that, they just don't talk about a break. If the news said, hey, Friday morning we're going to be down 8 degrees, well, I think I'd say Rosary of Thanksgiving, So, anyway, but we have to pray that the Holy Father and young people so enjoy each other that they don't notice the heat. But it might be a bit cooler there. But the big news is tomorrow. The big news, obviously, today, the Holy Father resumed general audiences, and he talked about the doctrine of the Church of Vatican Council II, that is, on liturgy. This is his 5th audience on that topic. But the audience was held inside St. Peter's Basilica. It was really quite lovely to watch the Holy Father and 2 assistants. His own secretary must be on holidays because he's not the one that was normally sitting at the Pope's left. But the crowd was very joyful. You could see probably 2,000 people fanning themselves because it had to be. It probably was cool in the church, but then you put thousands of people in a space, and the temperature literally goes up. So there was a wonderful audience today, and that he had not had one for the whole month of July, which most of which time he spent, as we know, in Castel Gandolfo at the Apostolic Palace. But there was exciting news today, other than the Pope presiding at the general audience. And by the way, of course, it was inside. If no commentator mentioned it on TV, it would have been downright cruel,
right,
to have had it in St. Peter's Square. I mean, you'd have had people passing out, right and left. So even if they have to use fans to get cool, it was much better on the inside and much healthier. But the Vatican always has, no matter where the Pope is, no matter where an audience is, there are always healthcare officials, available. So they have medical centers, doctors and nurses available for any anything that might happen inside or outside for an audience. But again, there was some very exciting news that the Vatican gave us today, and a lot of us had been kind of expecting this information. We just didn't know what day, but the Vatican announced that Pope Leo will undertake an apostolic journey to Uruguay, Argentina, and Peru from November 6th to the 17th this year. Now, no papal trip is ever arranged unless invitations come from the country involved, from the head of state, and, of course, the church authorities. So that's been arranged. But, Teresa, I went online, and I was actually stunned to find out Uruguay, where Catholics make up only 36% of the population, is the country with the lowest number of Catholics in all of Latin America. And get this, Pope John Paul II is the only reigning pope who has visited Uruguay. He was there in March of 87 and May of 1988. So Pope Leo will be only the second reigning pontiff to visit Uruguay. And then Argentina, get this, only one pope has visited Argentina in history. Yes, sir. Pope John Paul. He was there in 1982 and again in 1987. Of course, Pope Francis was from Argentina and Pope for over 12 years, but he never went back to his native country. And then we go to Peru, which I think lately we've learned more about vis-a-vis a papacy. And so Pope John Paul II and Pope Francis are the only popes who have officially visited Peru. John Paul was there twice in 85 and 88, and then Pope Francis visited once, and that was January of 2018. But, as we all know, Peru is, of course, a country that Pope Leo knows very well, having arrived as a missionary for the Augustinians in the 1980s, later serving as a bishop and also acquiring citizenship. And if you look at the schedule of his trip, that is the country where he will spend the most time. And he'll be there from November 11th to the 17th. And his trip begins on the 6th. So it ought to be absolutely just an immensely wonderful trip. I can't even imagine. We know how excited we all were, and sometimes we still think about his utterly stunning trip to Spain. And I'm sure Latin America, where he lived and visited and traveled for so many years as priest and bishop and citizen. That will be an equally amazing trip, I am sure. So put that on our calendar,
Yeah, well, he's visiting, this is incredible in terms of the schedule. He's visiting 10 cities in the journey to Latin America in 11 days. 10 cities in 11 days.
Exactly. And so in Uruguay, 3 cities, starting with Montevideo, and then and he's going to Argentina, Buenos Aires, Cordoba, and Luján. And then, as I said, in Peru, it's going to be Lima, Chiclayo, of course, where he was bishop, Cusco, and Pucallpa. So totally amazing. I can't even begin to think of the crowds of people.
I was just going to say, people are going to go nuts when he goes to Peru, especially because he spent so much time there. It is going to be so sweet to see that. And to see the reaction, because he's a citizen and he did so much great missionary work there. That is going to be amazing.
No, a trip that we are all going to want to be on, and the one way we can be on it, if not the papal plane, will be obviously via all the video coverage by the Vatican, which will be also reiterated by EWTN, because we will have people on the plane, but EWTN will also have people. We have people in Latin America, so
we'll be there and we'll be covering it live. It'll be so exciting! Oh my goodness, it'll be so exciting. All right, my dear. Well, I was telling people about your wonderful blog to make sure they check it out, and look forward to catching up with you again next week after we take a look at the Holy Father's beautiful visit, which is a lot closer. He's flying in helicopter tomorrow morning to get to Assisi by 8:30, which is pretty close. It's only about 2 hours north of Rome. We'll be right back. Glad we were able to quickly grab Joni on her cell phone. It's live radio, but that was great because we're also excited to follow our Holy Father. So many wonderful trips. His 6th international trip already. That is phenomenal. God bless him. Alrighty then, coming up in hour number 2 on a Wednesday, looking forward to it. We are going to be, of course, giving you a full newscast, an update on the elections, the weather, and all that good stuff. And then in our 2 cents segment, we're starting to see people who were raked over the coals, embarrassed, attacked, called all sorts of names. Many people lost their jobs during the COVID crisis, and now they're speaking out after the hearings with Anthony Fauci last week, and rightfully so. They have a right to speak out and to, express their concerns about what may or may not happen with Fauci based on what he said to the public and what he said to in his diary, which was completely the opposite. And so we found this message that was from a podcast yesterday featuring the famous quarterback Aaron Rodgers, who was really taken to task because he didn't want to get the vaccine. And he's speaking out about that. And then there's also many people who are talking about the contempt vote, which is set to come up in Congress tomorrow. We'll actually have more on that as well. And then I'm excited to speak with a very dynamic young man, someone who has a great background in the Catholic faith and Catholic law. He now is with the Diocese of Peoria, so he is very involved in beautiful events coming up for all the events surrounding, of course, Archbishop Fulton Sheen. We'll talk with Royce Hood, Chief Operating Officer of the Diocese of Peoria as well. Stay tuned.
Welcome to Catholic Connection with Teresa Tomeo, keeping you connected to your faith and your world. Teresa tackles the issues of faith and culture, the pro-life message, and media awareness. And now, here's Teresa Tomeo.
And it's a Wednesday, hour number 2 of Catholic Connection here on EWTN's Radio Extra. Great to be with you on a Wednesday as we continue our programming. Looking forward to hour number 2. Of course, we'll have the news and the weather for you. And then in 2 cents, we'll have an update on the Anthony Fauci story. If you recall, a week ago today, he went before a Senate hearing, Homeland Security Commission, and admitted that the diary was his. He said it was his unredacted diary. And he said they were using it against him to embarrass him. And then he went on to invoke the Fifth Amendment 111 times. Well, just 1 day and a week after his testimony last Wednesday, coming up tomorrow, there will be a vote for contempt for his refusal to answer questions in Congress. And we're going to take a look at that from a truly Catholic perspective. Yesterday, we did briefly discuss this with the Catholic League and the wonderful Bill Donahue. A story that was bypassed, shocker, by the secular media had to do with experiments from Dr. Fauci, his role in overseeing NIH experiments inserting human aborted baby parts into mice for coronavirus research. He refused to answer those questions that were posed by Senator Ernst from Iowa, and Bill Donahue wrote a letter. You can find it on his website, catholicleague.org, all about this and how they're supporting the contempt vote, which is coming up tomorrow. We are in an election year, and this is extremely crucial that we make sure that we are not being duped. Anthony Fauci, who admitted again that this was his diary, in writing on a government computer during the COVID crisis, said one thing to himself and said the exact opposite to the public. Those statements that he made publicly led to how many deaths, how many school closures, how many church closures. How much of what he told, because he called himself the science, he was considered the expert, especially by the leftist media, which, by the way, circled the wagons around him last week after this story at the hearing broke, because they are culpable, extremely culpable in all of this. But we need to know how the media work. or they're going to work on us yet again, as Archbishop Chaput always says. And not just the media, but certain areas of the government, of the political system, want us to believe something and ignore it. Nothing to look at here. Imagine, God forbid, if this were to happen again, depending on who gets in office. And this is why it's important for us to look at this from a Catholic perspective. What does our faith teach us about public responsibility, about voting, about being involved in the public sector, about being a faithful citizen? All of this pertains to us as Catholics. So we'll discuss this, and we're going to have a clip from football star, quarterback Aaron Rodgers, who was just taken to task and raked over the coals by the sports media and beyond because he stood up saying he didn't think he should have to take the vaccine. Of course, anybody who did that and was a public figure, had their image totally taken to task and tarnished greatly because they weren't, falling in line with the Fauci rules. So we'll talk about that in 2 cents. And then we're going to have some exciting conversation about beautiful events coming up in September in the Diocese of Peoria, all about, of course, the beatification of Archbishop Fulton Sheen. And that will be the remainder of our program at the bottom of the hour, and then wrapping up, taking it all the way to the top of the hour at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. All right, let's take a look at the forecast before we check out the news this morning on a Wednesday. National Weather Service saying there's a series of fronts focusing on locally heavy showers and storms, and this will be across portions of the central and eastern U.S. through the end of the work week. Dangerous to extreme heat conditions across the southwest and eventually spreading eastward over the weekend into early next week. Elevated fire weather conditions continue across the Great Basin with degraded air quality lingering across the Northwest, most likely because of those wildfires. And lots of problems out there. 4 minutes past the hour now. It's a Wednesday. Let's take a look at the news here at EWTN's Radio Extra. President Trump said, plain and simple, Iran is lying when it says there's no talks with the U.S.
The only thing that matters is action, and they want to make a deal. We'll see what happens. If they don't make a deal, it's going to be too bad.
That was the president last night on Fox News. Iran and Oman saying they have control of the strait, a vital maritime passage that saw 20% of the world's oil traffic in the Strait of Hormuz before the war with Iran. Meanwhile, Secretary of State Marco Rubio saying that progress has been made in talks with both countries, but no agreement has yet been reached. And in response to the president's announcement last week of a deal between the U.S.-led Board of Peace, Israel, and Hamas, the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops called for intense prayers for that deal's success as Gaza faces a worsening humanitarian crisis. EWTNnews.com reports in an August 3rd statement, Bishop Elias Zayden, chair of the USCCB's Committee on International Justice and Peace, saying he is heartened by news of an agreement which aims at the disarmament of Hamas and Israel's military withdrawal from Gaza, calling for intense prayers for the success of those negotiations. U.S. President Donald Trump announcing last week that his Board of Peace had reached the deal. He said the agreement will be carried out in carefully structured phases. Though a Hamas official confirmed the disarmament pact the next day, according to the Associated Press, significant hurdles remain, leaving the deal's implementation uncertain despite U.S. optimism. EWTN News again reporting Israel has not publicly endorsed that agreement and has continued airstrikes, reporting that at least 17 people, including children, were killed in Gaza this past weekend. Michael Kastner tells us there's an investigation underway now. This after a man was arrested for suspicious behavior outside a fundraiser for the president.
Trump was in Southern California on Tuesday for a fundraising dinner at his golf club near Long Beach, where he was met outside the venue by a large group of both supporters and protesters. The same day, the LAPD announced they'd arrested a man over the weekend who was seen photographing the golf club just days before Trump's visit. The suspect was reportedly a 38-year-old man from Downey, California, who had several weapons in his possession. In Los Angeles, I'm Michael Kastner.
Voters hitting the polls yesterday for another big primary election day in America in arguably the closest watched race of the day. Several outlets are saying now that Abdul El-Sayed has won Michigan's Democratic U.S. Senate primary. The Democratic Socialist appears to have defeated establishment-backed Congresswoman Haley Stevens, although early this morning she was not ready to concede the race just yet.
We knew that this was going to be a close race, and that's exactly what we've got.
The race has divided the party strongly, with fears within the DNC that an El Sayed victory would pull the party even further left and hurt their midterm hopes to regain control of the House and the Senate. NBC News has also projected that John James will win the Republican Party primary for Michigan governor, the congressman defeating Perry Johnson and Mike Cox, the president endorsing James, facing Democrat Jocelyn Benson in the midterm election. Scott Carr tells us at a report that says at least 12 states have now reported cyber attacks against their water systems, and that could be linked to Iran.
ABC News says officials in Michigan, one of the newer states to report the attacks, are monitoring the situation and coordinating with federal partners. So far, there have been no reports of any disruptions to water supplies or wastewater treatment. Minnesota was the first state to report the attacks last week. On Friday, President Trump blamed Minnesota's Democratic governor for the attacks, even though U.S. officials had previously said they're investigating whether Iran or hackers associated with Iran could be behind them. I'm Scott Carr in Washington.
A man suspected of starting one of the massive wildfires in Spokane, Washington, appearing in court yesterday for a hearing. The judge setting bond for Aaron Rodgers.
With respect to the release conditions, the court will adopt the $1 million bond that's already in place and adopt all the proposed release conditions as suggested by the prosecution.
Fauci was arrested by a SWAT team earlier this week after a witness said he saw him acting suspiciously near where the Old Trails fire began over the weekend. He appeared, as you heard, in the Spokane court remotely from jail where the charges were read. And evacuated Spokane, Washington residents are returning home to find the charred remains of houses burned in the Old Trails fire. That's the one Fauci is accused of beginning. Residents began returning home yesterday morning to find houses charred down to the chimneys. Many residents, however, say they do plan to rebuild. The Old Trails fire is part of a larger Spokane complex fire that has destroyed 700 structures, including hundreds of homes since starting on Saturday. Over 60,000 people were forced to evacuate Spokane, their homes, over the weekend. And we'll talk more about this coming up in 2 cents. The Senate Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee will vote tomorrow on whether to hold Dr. Anthony Fauci in contempt. The vote comes after the former White House health advisor invoked the Fifth Amendment 111 times in a hearing last week about the COVID-19 pandemic. Fauci refused to answer questions after his unredacted diary, which revealed he lied about the source of the coronavirus, the safety, the efficacy of the vaccine, lockdowns, and more. Meanwhile, Steelers quarterback Aaron Rodgers is blasting Dr. Anthony Fauci over his Senate hearing last month. Rodgers was appearing on the Pat McAfee show live from Steelers training camp when he criticized Fauci strongly for pleading the Fifth Amendment last week in the recent hearing. The veteran quarterback, and we'll play a clip of that for you in the next segment, calling the former White House health advisor an absolute coward for refusing to answer questions related to the COVID-19 pandemic and the government's response. Rodgers previously took a great deal of criticism from the sports media and leaders and members of the public for being outspoken against the COVID vaccine during COVID. And President Trump's pick to lead the Justice Department has now been approved by a key Senate committee. Todd Blanche winning the support of Senator John Cornyn of Texas by signing a deal to permanently rescind the nearly $2 billion in anti-weaponization funding.
The weaponization fund is dead, and of course I expect them to live up to that in any future litigation.
That fund was billed as a way to compensate those who claimed they were unfairly targeted by the administration, the deal also narrowing the scope of the president and his family's audit immunity. And as we discussed previously with Joan Lewis this morning, the Holy Father undertaking a major apostolic journey to Uruguay, Argentina, and Peru this November. The dates are the 6th through the 17th. Uruguay, where Catholics make up only 36% of the population, is the country with the lowest number of Catholics in all of Latin America. Argentina, meanwhile, the homeland of course, Pope Francis, although the late Pope, who hailed from Buenos Aires, did not manage to visit during his 12-year pontificate. Peru, finally, is a country which the Holy Father knows very well. He first arrived as a missionary there in the 1980s, later serving as a bishop and acquiring citizenship. The journey to Latin America, which will see the Pope visit 10 cities over 11 days, will be his 6th international trip already, and the schedule for the journey will be released in the next few weeks. We have about, I think, maybe 60 seconds left in our news segment, and here's something to think about. Bree Tennis tells us our children are getting ready or are already going back to school, and they're facing backpack overload, but it's not in the classroom.
The average school backpack weighs over 15 pounds, which exceeds safety limits of no more than 10% of the child's body weight. Without lockers, kids are forced to carry the load: laptops, books, musical instruments, sports equipment, and more. Health officials say this year, look for a backpack with wide straps to better distribute weight, and maybe something with wheels. I'm Bree Tennis.
We'll be right back on a Wednesday. Stay tuned. It's interesting if you look at the reaction from the teammates and also the coaches for Aaron Rodgers, very successful quarterback, of how they're taking a much different tone, even the media now, toward his concerns about the vaccine. How many of us faced great criticism from family, even online? How many of us were canceled? How many of us may have lost friends because we simply asked questions? I can remember Vanessa Denhagarmo calling me during the whole situation with COVID, saying that she had been friends with particular reporters for many years, and all she did on her Facebook page is just ask the question, as any good reporter should have done, is why are we only talking to one medical expert? Why is Dr. Fauci the be-all and end-all here? Shouldn't we have opposing views and discuss this? Aren't we reporters? Why is it only him? Oh my goodness. She was attacked so strongly. To this day, 6 years later, there are people that still do not speak with her. Even though we learned that last week that Fauci, as the science, as he referred to himself, said one thing publicly and another thing privately in a diary which he admitted under oath that was his. It was a government computer on which he wrote over 1,000 pages of notes during the COVID crisis. Our freedom of speech was greatly affected. And as Dr. Bill Donahue said, the Catholic Church was greatly affected. And we know that. We're still trying to get attendance back. Children are still being affected. The fallout, the epidemic of loneliness, all of this. Now, we can't say that Fauci was the only problem because he was supported by government leaders and, of course, the media. But there were so many exceptions and hypocrisies during all of that. If you remember listening to Dr. Bill Donahue yesterday reminding us of how certain protests and certain types of body contact were greatly allowed and supported because the causes were necessary to support, as claimed by the left and the secular media, including Black Lives Matter. In the midst of everything, they were allowed to go to the streets, hold hands, be very close, and yet people still couldn't go see their families at the holidays. They had to remain 6 feet away from each other in public places, which Fauci admitted, not only in his diary, but publicly a few years ago. I think it was in 2022 or 23, he admitted that they just made that up. And then you had people who were very, very public, such as a successful quarterback as Aaron Rodgers, whose reputation was attacked because he spoke out against a vaccine. So there's all kinds of headlines now. If you just Google Aaron Rodgers, you'll see what people are saying, because he showed up on a podcast yesterday talking about the ridiculousness of Fauci refusing to answer questions and invoking the Fifth Amendment 111 times. We're We're going to play that clip right now from Aaron Rodgers, and then we'll talk what's coming up tomorrow related to Fauci as well. Take a listen.
Can you tell us about the mindset of coming into your last season? Like, that's a real thing, it feels like, because is everything better? Is everything funner? Is everything more awesome? Like, how do you kind of view this year versus maybe the years of the past?
I'm going to plead the fifth.
Okay.
Okay. Like
Gotta love that guy.
Like that absolute coward, Tony Fauci. Absolute coward.
Yeah.
Aaron's back,
Are
baby.
you kidding me?
Yeah, 111
You
times.
got a pardon and you're in front and you pleaded over 100 times at the White House? What are you scared of, Tony?
Yeah.
I thought you were the science.
Yeah.
I thought you were I am science, and you get up there and you can't answer a question?
Yeah.
What are we doing?
baby.
And how much time did the network spend at that? How much time did they spend on my responses every week, on my vaccination status, on Taylor and Travis's wedding? Did they do even a minute? Did they do even a minute on Tony Fauci?
No, I don't think I've heard
Nah,
anything.
I bet they didn't.
But on that note,
And there was another scandal this offseason, too, involving a voter for MVP, for Coach of the Year. How much time did your network spend? Where's your Kim? Did your network spend on
our
that?
network.
I wish I could
Fauci.
Go back to Fauci. I wish I could Fauci. This is awesome.
Go back to Fauci?
Yeah.
Go back to the coward Tony Fauci and science?
Hold on now.
Who's spending the entire time writing in his diary about how fun it is to be famous? You got to be kidding me.
Okay, so on that note.
What are you going to say about me now?
Debate him.
What are you going to say about me
No,
now?
I got no debate here. You had a 500.
No, seriously, what are they going to say about me now? Now you can't talk about the COVID stuff because obviously it was made, in a lab in China. That's like not even questionable anymore. Tony Fauci is an absolute criminal.
So this is quarterback Aaron Rodgers, and quite frankly, good for him for speaking up. He was literally raked over the coals and made out to be such a bad guy because he spoke out against the vaccine. And so many other people suffered so much worse. How many people lost loved ones? And not only that, are you familiar with this story? And this is, we briefly mentioned it yesterday with Dr. Bill Donahue from the Catholic League. You can find it on thecatholicleague.org. He wrote a letter to Senator Johnny Erst from Iowa, thanking her for questioning Fauci last week. Thank you for questioning Dr. Anthony Fauci about his role in overseeing NIH experiments that inserted human aborted baby parts into mice for coronavirus research. His refusal to answer was expected. Fortunately, you are asking the DOJ to pursue a contempt case against him. The Catholic League fully supports your request. In the summer of 2021, news reports surfaced about a study done by the University of Pittsburgh that fused unborn baby parts into lab rodents to grow adult human skin and cells from organs such as spleens and livers. It was carried out by an agency under the tutelage of Dr. Fauci. When I learned of this, I wrote to Pennsylvania Auditor Timothy Lee DeFore asking for an investigation into charges that the University of Pittsburgh School of Medicine was operating a fetal chop shop. He sent my letter to the school's chancellor, the dean of the medical school, and a press official at the university. After an investigation by a legal group, it was determined no laws were broken. I hasten to add that the university is currently under federal investigation for allegedly harvesting fetal tissue for research purposes. Alas, Dr. Fauci is still on trial, hopefully. Thank you for your leadership. We are with you all the way. So, coming up tomorrow, as we mentioned in the news, there is going to be a vote regarding Fauci being in contempt for absolutely refusing to answer any question regarding COVID-19. And it is an important situation that we should remain aware of. We are in an election year. We have midterms coming up. How many people want us to just look the other way about how many of these politicians who are running for office again or who supported these ridiculous, damaging, life-threatening, and life-altering policies and procedures that came from the science. Now, Fauci wasn't the only one involved, but he was the face of COVID. So I think we really need to pray and to make sure that we understand how much we were duped. The word fear is often seen as an acronym. False evidence appearing as real. I'm glad to see people like our own Bill Donahue, of course, no surprise there, speaking up and showing how this is a very important Catholic issue, obviously, of voters, and to be citizens out there in the public. It's a very important part of who we are. But also the life issues that's connected not only to the aborted baby parts, but so much more. We need to know how the media and politics work so they don't work on us. We'll be right back. You know, it's such a blessing to see young, dynamic Catholic college students grow into incredible leaders in the faith, but it makes me feel very old. I was just telling our guest, Royce Hood, who is with the Catholic Diocese of Peoria, that I remember my first interview with him when he was a student at Ave Maria University. It was at the March for Life, and I was covering it for EWTN, obviously, which I do every year in January. And he goes on to be a wonderful attorney and doing a lot of great pro-life and pro-Catholic law. And now, just more recently, he is working for the wonderful Catholic Diocese of Peoria. And he's very involved in some pretty exciting stuff related to the beatification coming up, of course, of Archbishop Fulton Sheen. He now serves as the Chief Operating Officer for the Catholic Diocese of Peoria in the Diocesan Chancery. So, wow, Royce, I'm feeling very old this morning, my dear. But I love your picture. You look so handsome and sophisticated in your picture on the diocesan website.
You know, I don't even know if I've seen that picture. So that's good to hear that they picked a good one.
Well, how are you, my dear? Great to catch up with you.
I'm doing great. And I know we've known each other for a little while, but honestly, you haven't aged one bit. And, so it's just amazing how time flies, though. And it's great to reconnect with you.
Well, first of all, tell us about your position. What are you doing? How did you land in the lovely Diocese of Peoria?
Yeah, great question. My wife is actually from here originally, so it was a really easy move for us and an easy opportunity. But Bishop Toka presented the opportunity of serving the diocese as the chief operating officer. And really my job is to advance his vision for the diocese, through the pastoral center and all the great work that we do. It's a big diocese, but on the heels of that, as we were discussing the opportunity and the position, there's no secret that Sheen is kind of a big deal as well. And so I realized that I'd have an opportunity to be a part of the amazing cause for Sheen, in particular the beatification. So it's really just quite a blessing to be here, and great opportunity to serve the church.
All right, so great things happening. Tell us about them in conjunction with the, of course, beatification coming up.
Yeah, so, when Bishop Toka really prayerfully discerned that we needed to host this event in St. Louis, and we're talking about the beatification of Fulton Sheen, Peoria just didn't have a place big enough for the demand that we recognized that Sheen would have. And so we decided the bishop made the call, put this event in St. Louis where we could have thousands, tens of thousands of people come out, and that's what we're doing. So the beatification will be in St. Louis. The beatification itself is surrounded by events before and after, and it starts in Peoria, goes to St. Louis, and comes back to Peoria. And there's a schedule at celebratesheen.com, but we're starting with the Novena of Holy Hour. Sheen really was passionate about the Holy Hour, and so that'll start off on September 15th. Every night there'll be a reflection and an opportunity for people to pray and reflect. And that will also be live streamed from our cathedral for people that are anywhere in the world can tune in. We've got the anniversary mass of when Sheen was ordained a priest happening this Sunday after we kick things off. And then of course we go to St. Louis for Vespers the night before the beatification, and then the big beatification day itself. And there's a lot happening. There's an expo, there's adoration, confession, there's a Celebrate Sheen show prior to the Mass. That'll be broadcast and streamed worldwide with a great lineup of speakers and folks that are going to help guide people's thoughts as we orient ourselves towards the Mass later that day. And then there'll be veneration of relics. The following day, Teresa, we're all, most of us are coming back to Peoria. There's masses of Thanksgiving at the cathedral where Sheen's body is entombed. And then we've got the inaugural Sheen Awards, which is a really exciting event. People think about the Emmys, the Oscars. This will be the Sheens. And it's an opportunity for the foundation here in Peoria to recognize folks who are using their platform to advance the faith in a manner similar to what Sheen did. You know, he was involved in so much, from missions to broadcast to radio to authorship and so forth. So really exciting. And by the way, the Sheen Awards is going to happen every single year here in Peoria.
Oh, cool.
And it'll be broadcast. I hope you come, and it'll be streamed. It's going to be a TV show that people can watch and really celebrate the faith.
Well, EWTN will be there because we're everywhere. But let's talk a little bit about, do you already have the names of people? Can you give us a little hint of who you're going to be recognizing?
You know, I don't know that I can release the names yet of those who are being recognized. However, if folks go to the CelebrateSheen.com and click on Sheen Awards, you can go to SheenAwards.com as well. You can see a lineup of some of the special guests that are participating and that will be involved in it. We've got David Henry is going to be helping to MC. We've got Bishop Barron, Monsignor Landry, and a few others, and those names are being added on. So really, really excited. There's going to be a red carpet. And by the way, what's the purpose of this? Aside from recognizing great contributions, I think we really want to encourage people to use their platforms to promote the faith. But the Sheen Awards is also, I think, the annual event that will support the Sheen Museum and the Sheen Experience, which is in Peoria. And the museum that Bishop Tilka has envisioned, that is under construction now and hoping to open in about 3 years, will be an immersive studio, an immersive museum where people will be able to encounter Sheen. And if they're encountering Sheen, they're going to encounter Christ. Everything from a replica studio where Sheen will come alive with technology to a working studio where people can create content and so forth. So really, there's a lot of very exciting things happening in Peoria. I tell people, I think this is probably, I've never seen innovation and evangelization through innovation in a manner in which we're doing it here in Peoria.
Mm-hmm. It's pretty exciting, and there's so many wonderful people that are gathering. You mentioned that there's the list in terms of the celebration. You have His Eminence Cardinal Timothy Dolan, whom I just love. I just think he's so dynamic. And then you have also Sister Garrett. She's amazing, Sister Josephine Garrett. She's an incredible speaker. And our very own Monsignor Rodger Landry from EWTN, of course. He's such a great writer and speaker and devoted priest. This is really exciting.
Yeah, it's historic. We fully expect that we'll have a full house. We can have over 70,000 guests in St. Louis. There's still tickets available. I think we might have just crossed over the 40,000 tickets reserved for the Dome.
Wow.
Yeah, very exciting. But by the way, I actually think the biggest audience is going to be people around the world sitting at home, listening on the radios, streaming, watching on their TVs, because it's going to be broadcast internationally. It'll be streamed as well. And so really, if the Turning Point halftime show for the Super Bowl can get 21 million streams on YouTube, I'm really hopeful that we can land at least 1 million. That's a conservative goal. I think we could land a lot more than that in terms of people tuning in. And what are they tuning into? Well, it's the liturgy. It's the Mass.
Right.
And, there are people that aren't Catholic that recognize Sheen, that may tune in and witness the Mass for the first time in their life. And what an amazing opportunity for us to share the beauty of our faith.
Yeah, and how apropos, being that he was such a brilliant broadcaster and communicator, that this is an opportunity for people to see him in his own, really, if you think about it, his own genre, his own format, TV, radio. His ratings, by the way, as you know, I'm sure you're familiar with this, they beat the local programming and the national programming at the time. Imagine that, an archbishop and his show beating comedians that were on the air that were competing with him in terms of the airwaves. More with Royce Hood, the Chief Operating Officer of the Diocese of Peoria, talking about the Sheen Awards and Archbishop Fulton Sheen's beatification. Great for us. We'll be right back. Of course, EWTN will be all over this, and we'll give you the details as we get closer. Of course, Peter Gagnon, who joins us on Fridays for her Inside Word, will be keeping us up to date, our president of EWTN Studios. Very exciting times in the One Holy Catholic and Apostolic Faith. We are chatting with Royce Hood from the Catholic Diocese of Peoria, all about celebrating Archbishop Sheen as we move closer to his beatification coming up in September. So let me ask you, Royce, what does Archbishop Fulton Sheen mean to you?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's a real personal side to this story. I won't go into all the details, but
we have time. Feel free.
We have time. All right. Well, careful what you ask for. Lawyers like to talk, so
that's okay.
My wife and I, you might remember the story. We found out we had a child with Potter syndrome when about 20 weeks in the womb. We discovered that our little baby boy had no kidneys and no bladder, and we did not really have a great prognosis. And so we found out that he was a little boy, and we named him Fulton. And we were in Peoria at that time. Actually, this is going back to 2020 and 2021. And so we enjoyed every minute that we had with Fulton in the womb, and he was stillborn on Good Friday, ultimately. Not the miracle that we wanted. We prayed hard for a miracle for a full healing, but the prognosis was that he would be born alive. There was nothing wrong. He had everything he needed to survive in the womb. And so he would be born alive, and he would suffer, and we would hold him until he passed. But he ultimately passed away in the womb just before Good Friday, which to us was a real grace, not needing to witness him suffer. And we would pray often at the tomb of Fulton Sheen right here in Peoria, Illinois. Mm-hmm. We recorded a song using the heartbeat captured from one of his ultrasounds, and that song is called Fulton Song. So what does Fulton Sheen mean to us? Really, I feel like we gave our little Fulton to the Blessed Mother and asked for Fulton Sheen's intercession. And so when I found out that I might have some small role to play in assisting Bishop Tilke and the team here with the beatification of Fulton Sheen, I was 100% all in.
Wow.
He is so that's what it means to me personally. And then, of course, I'm a media guy. I love film. I love music. I love broadcast and radio and things like that. And just seeing what Sheen, he was a pioneer, an innovator, and he touched so many hearts. So that's the short version of the answer.
You know what I think, and this just hit me as you were chatting about your baby boy. I think that was a thank you from Archbishop Fulton Sheen and your little boy for, giving him to Fulton Sheen and our Lord and our Lady. And this is in thanks to, your sacrifice and your love for your child. And now you're given the opportunity to celebrate Archbishop Fulton Sheen and your son all over again, I think.
It's amazing. We've definitely felt the Holy Spirit throughout that pregnancy, and even with just the providence of being able to join the diocese and help. By the way, it's the Archbishop Fulton John Sheen Foundation here in Peoria is the foundation that is opening the museum and sort of running things on behalf of the diocese, and it's just amazing what we're going to be able to do with Sheen and all the people that I think are going to witness Christ and come to the church and be a part of it. Even just think about the beatification for a moment in St. Louis. By the way, doors open at 8 a.m. That's important for people to know. If they're listening, come. Get there early. We're going to have amazing vendors. But again, opportunities to go to adoration, to confession, and then to come and witness the Celebrate Sheen show. We were talking offline for a moment about Matt Mayer is going to be there performing. We're going to have a number of great inspirational videos. Actually, there's something even cooler. We're going to have a sizzle reel for the state-of-the-art museum that'll be opening in Peoria. So we'll be releasing that sizzle reel, and people will be able to see that for the first time. Mm-hmm. You said celebration, Teresa. I couldn't agree more. Everything from the liturgy to the Sheen Awards, it's just going to be such a beautiful, beautiful few days.
So what is, Royce, the best place to go for information for the big celebration?
Yeah, absolutely. Go to celebratesheen.com. Everything you need is there. Because of the complexity of this event, there's several different places you need to go to register depending on what you're registering for. So there's a link to Ticketmaster to register for tickets at the Dome. And then there's a separate area if somebody wants to attend a Mass of Thanksgiving or a novena where you can register for those. Those are free events, but their space is so limited that we do ask people to RSVP when possible. And then we've got the Sheen Awards itself, which is a ticketed event in Peoria. And I tell people it's really not a dinner. It's a show with a dinner. And so it's sort of very exciting. So
dinner and a show.
celebrate.com.
You get dinner and a show, right?
Dinner and a show. Kind of like a date, dinner and a movie, right? Yeah.
That's funny. Talking with Royce Hood, Chief Operating Officer for the Diocese of Peoria, Illinois. Okay, so this, I think, is so incredible in terms of the variety of people that are going to be there, the opportunity now as a young person, and I know you're still relatively young, a lot younger than I am. We've known each other for a long time, but don't you think it's a coincidence that this beatification is coming at a time, and I just saw another story this morning online, when so many young people, not only here in America, but overseas, are coming into the church. I don't think that is a coincidence. I think that is a Godcidence, as I like to say, Royce.
Absolutely. Jason Jones, a friend of mine, always says the Holy Spirit Action Plan, and I've borrowed that from him over the years. I think that's what we're witnessing. We're witnessing truly a revival with young people. You can see it on social media. It's amazing to see. I was just at the seminarian dinner here in Peoria. We've got Father Chase, the former soccer star turned priest, who's now our vocations director. But to see these young men giving their life, and in many ways willing to lay down their life for Christ, that's just on the vocation side, for the priesthood. But the young people on social media, we've talked internally as a team. If Fulton Sheen was alive today, where would you be able to find him? Would it be on broadcast radio? Probably. Would it be on TikTok, Instagram,
Probably.
social media? Probably, right? So, and we're seeing that. I mean, he is one of the most memed figures in the Catholic Church, certainly. I mean, if you go and just look, and his memes are everywhere. His sayings are everywhere. 67 books. Just phenomenal.
There's so much going on. I mean, if we think about the young man who sold his cosmetics company in California, the former owner of Alf Ears, Lips, and Face, he was a multi-millionaire, probably close to even a billionaire. Okay, and it's just incredible that he gave it all up and became a priest. And the stories of God moving in people's lives right now. And again, as we said, the same time, we're seeing this incredible beatification. I just think just out of interest of the Catholic faith, people are going to be tuning in, don't you?
I do. And I think that's right. It's interesting. We know of, again, 40,000 people right now. We're planning, and I anticipate we will easily hit our goal, which is about 70,000 tickets and folks coming to celebrate with us. How many of those people have not actually been to Mass in many years, or maybe have never been to Mass at all? And they're coming because they recognize Sheen. It's a historic event for our country. We're celebrating the 250th year of our country, which is quite amazing as well. We've got a Pope from Illinois. We've got now
that's the other thing. You have a Pope from Chicago, and Illinois is connected here. This is just crazy.
How do they say it in New York, Teresa? Is it the Pope? I mean, that's how they're saying it in Chicago.
Well, I don't know. I'm in Michigan, so it's kind of the same way they say it in Chicago. So pretty similar. Yeah.
The Pope. Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, all these things are coming together. It's a convergence of grace. And, I think it's just going to be phenomenal to see where it goes after the beatification, what comes next. And I know here in Peoria, we have a lot of work to do. We want to open this Sheen experience within the next 3 years, where people will be able to come. By the way, the Sheen experience is what's really interesting is Fulton Sheen graduated, valedictorian of his class, at a place called the Spalding Institute right here in Peoria. The Spalding Institute building is where we are creating the museum and experience for Fulton Sheen.
So when will that be? Do you have a conclusion date in terms of when it will finish with the construction, and when will it be open, Royce?
We have to, yes, it is under construction. We're preparing the building now. The goal is to open that in 3 years from now. So figure 3 years from now, roughly, we're looking at 2029. But we have a lot of work to do. We need to raise a lot of money to make it happen. And so people can learn about that. Again, if you go to celebratesheen.com, and there's a link for the Sheen experience. Actually, we're creating a founders club. This is kind of exciting, where people can become a founder of the Sheen experience for just a small, monthly gift, and they can be a founder for life. The reason why I'm stressing that is really that's the next big thing, at least for us, apart from hopefully canonization at some point in the future. And the opportunity there is to teach young people. Like, imagine for a moment a place in Sheen's name, a place, to promote Sheen and celebrate Sheen, where young people could come and create content, and other people can come and there'll be a little library where they can read his book. But then you can actually witness Life is Worth Living and see one of the shows come to life in front of you. And then, by the way, Teresa, if you're visiting Peoria in a few years, once we open, after that show is done and you want to do one of your radio shows, you'll actually be able to broadcast right from the facility.
I'm in. We're in. Let's plan on it.
It'll be a working studio. It's going to be great. So we'll have you.
We're talking with Royce Hood from the Catholic Diocese of Peoria, Illinois, all about the amazing events coming up in September, of course, directly connected to the wonderful beatification of Archbishop Fulton Sheen. I love it when you go to the website and it says you're going back and forth between Peoria and St. Louis. How long of a drive is it, just out of curiosity?
It depends on who's driving. If my wife is driving, it's probably 2 hours. If I'm driving, it's about 2.5 hours.
Okay. Yeah, because it says, I'm trying to think, doesn't it say Peoria, St. Louis, Peoria, right?
Yeah, people just need to recognize that. Plan on, if you're planning a Sheen pilgrimage to celebrate the beatification, if you can, Peoria, St. Louis, Peoria. And it starts off with the novena. And then we have, all these great things, the museum. People can come visit the tomb now. They can visit a museum of Fulton Sheen now and see some of the amazing artifacts associated with his ministries. Go to celebrate the beatification in St. Louis and then come back and join us for Masses of Thanksgiving and the Sheen Awards. By the way, and then you can actually go out to El Paso. There's points of interest and visit the parish where Sheen himself was baptized. We've got a local restaurant creating the Sheen loaf. A lot of people don't realize Fulton Sheen had a meatloaf recipe.
The Sheen loaf. Oh my gosh!
It's called the Sheen loaf. It's great. So people can come here and try the Sheen loaf while they're here.
Okay, so what's different about the Sheen loaf? Give us a little insider tip about the recipe.
Okay, am I allowed to spill the secrets?
Sure, exclusive here on Catholic Connection. Yeah.
All right. The secret ingredient was applesauce.
Ah, that makes sense.
Yeah. I'll be honest with you, it's very good. So Kenny's West Side here in Peoria has recreated the Sheen loaf for us. So it's actually quite good.
Well, I love to cook, and I make a mean meatloaf, so I'll have to try that to put, because I would imagine, just from a cook's perspective, thinking about things that go together, it would give just a little sweetness to it and a lot of moisture.
It really does. There's some red peppers in there. You can actually find the recipe to the Sheen loaf online. It's not such a big secret, but recreating it, the art is, a pinch of salt might mean one thing for you and something else for me.
Well, it'd be kind of fun. You guys should serve it at one of your meals at the events. That would be really cool to have the Sheen loaf. That would be really cool. Royce, what a joy to catch up with you, and you're doing such great work. Thank you for keeping in touch, and let's move forward with this and have you on again as we get closer. We're talking with, of course, Royce Hood from the Diocese of Peoria. And so exciting, CelebrateSheen.com. Don't forget, September 15th through the 26th, Peoria, St. Louis, Peoria, Midwest of America. Archbishop Fulton Sheen, pray for us. We'll be right back. Isn't that exciting? All these different events coming up in honor of Archbishop Fulton Sheen. I'm so proud of EWTN, and we have kept his messages, his programs alive and on the air for decades. And of course, we'll be involved in that coverage, and we'll keep you up to date in terms of where we will be and when. Of course, our very own, Monsignor Landry, very involved. Just really super exciting. And that's all coming up in September around the beatification of the amazing Archbishop Fulton Sheen. All right, what's coming up tomorrow on Catholic Connection? My friend Patty McGuire Armstrong is going to be joining us. We're also going to be talking with a young woman who has an incredible journey, and her name is Paula Umana, and she is talking about her journey from tennis champion and to some great struggles that she's had, and she is now paralyzed partially, and she'll share her journey of faith and her suffering and the difference it's made in her life. So that's what's coming up tomorrow on Catholic Connection. So looking forward to it. Also, just want to remind you, don't forget, since tomorrow the Holy Father will be at St. Mary of the Angels which is below Assisi. It's an actual town named after the church. To be sure to check out all of our coverage of that event, because we will be there live. We'll have more about it tomorrow, of course. But also take a look at the free EWTN Learn series. I can't stress this enough. I don't get any money for it. It's something that I did out of the love of my heart for the saints and for all things Catholic in Italy. But it's such a beautiful series, and there was so much effort put into it. You can find it at EWTN.com/St. Francis. Talk to you tomorrow. Ciao, ciao.